Hello, welcome back to another video. The sun is shining, the grass is growing, and we've got this Hayter lawnmower to service. So this is a Hayter Harrier 48 with a Briggs and Stratton quantum engine. This one's from 1999, so 21 years old at the time of recording, there or thereabouts. I haven't got a clue when it was last serviced, as with a lot of garden equipment that I work on. So we're going to do a full service. You know, things like where we'd usually clean the air filter, I'm just going to actually change it in this case. Same with the spark plug. So we're going to check the clutch, check the throttle, lubricate the cables, adjust the cables, check the cutter blade, change the oil, change the air filter, and there's also a pre-filter, change the spark plug, clean the deck underneath and get all of this dried leaves and grass and stuff out of the way. Before I do that, I'm going to give it a quick run, see if it'll start, and just to listen to how it runs and check it drives okay and everything, and then we'll get started with taking it apart. That also helps with warming up the oil a little bit, so it makes it a little bit easier to drain. So before we do any of that, we better check there's actually some oil in it, and there is. Not enough, really. It's on the lower end of the dipstick marks, but given that I'm just going to run it very quickly to warm it up a little bit and see how it drives, I'm okay with that. So we'll do that, and then we'll start doing the service. Okay, so the drive works alright. It's kind of mutilating the grass a bit, which suggests that the blades need sharpening or changing, and I'll confess I've actually just bought a new blade for this because I suspected that the blade would be beyond sharpening. Even if it isn't, that at least means we've got a spare blade that we can sharpen while the other one is on. You probably also noticed that it wouldn't tick over on the tortoise setting, and it wasn't revving smoothly on the hare setting either. Now I know this mower hasn't been used for quite a while, so that's probably a sign that there's not enough fuel getting through and the carburettor is gummed up, so we're going to do a carburettor service as well. So before I start, let's get rid of some of this. Having seen the state of all the grass around there, I'm actually going to put this back on. So the manual talks about draining the fuel tank. I think probably the simplest way to do that is to take it off. That's a 10, unlike all the others. And then the fuel tank is loose. If I do it this way, I might actually be able to take it off without draining it. So now I'm just loosening the recoil. There we go. And that now means the fuel tank can be taken off and put out of the way. With the fuel removed, we can drain the oil. I'll rest that on there for now, it needs a good clean anyway. So the way to do this, according to the manual anyway, is to tip it. And out comes the oil. Don't know if you can tell, that oil looks absolutely horrible. It looks like it's been in there far too long. It's supposed to be about 600 mils. I doubt very much that we'll get that much out of this. Just using a wedge under the other side to tip it up a bit more. So with the oil draining, we can have a go at the spark plug. Doesn't look too bad. This is an NGK B2 LM. The gap is 0.76, which, as I think I've said on other videos, probably makes a lot more sense if you're measuring in inches. But my spark plug gauges have got a 0.75, which will do for me. That's a bit tight. There we go. So I'm setting it. Are we focusing? So the 0.75 just fits through as a snug fit. So I've got a tiny bit of engine oil on the threads. And then you just saw I've done roughly 2 quarter turns, so half turn in total, till it feels fairly snug. I'm going to leave it disconnected just so there's no risk that the engine can fire while I'm messing about underneath it. So still while it's tipped up, just check the condition of the roller bearings, move the roller, check there's not too much play, check that the 2 halves of the roller can spin independently of each other, because that really helps with being able to turn a corner. There's a belt down here which you're not going to be able to see very easily, but this is the drive belt, and as you pull the, I can't do it and get down there to see it at the same time, but anyway, there's a pulley that tensions and detensions the belt to give the drive to these rollers. So just having a look at the condition of the belt, it's got some surface cracks in it, but only fairly minor. Looking at the condition of the drive cable as well, the tensions and detensions the belt, that looks okay. Moving on to the blade then, you can see that is blunt as anything, it's got some gouges, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it off, swap it with a new one that I've got. There we go. And then I can sharpen this one up and have it as a spare. That's a 14mm nut. I was expecting that blade to stay bent when I taken it off, but actually it was just under spring tension and it's completely flattened itself out. Right, with the blade off, good opportunity to clear out all the dried grass. This is an aluminium deck, so I'm not, in fact, is it even plastic? No, it's aluminium, so I'm not too worried about scratching it and it rusting. Mixture of plastic and aluminium, actually, that bit's plastic, aluminium at the front. So let's refit our blade. Now I want to put it on like that so that the holes match up, but I'm going to put it on where the old one was. The blade is torqued to 54 Newton meters. There we go. So we're done underneath the mower now. So I've got half a litre of a 10W30 oil. The manual kind of chops and changes about which oil to use. It says an SAE 30. But then it says if you're starting the mower in cold conditions that will damage the engine, and then it says that if you use a multi-grade, so a 10W30 or a 5W30, then you're going to be okay at lower temperatures, but you're going to increase your oil consumption. I'm using this because it's what I've got available. It's a fully synthetic oil, and I think that is quite important because these engines run quite hot, and so it's more stable, more able to withstand higher temperatures. I'm putting in half a litre to start with, and then we'll see how it looks. It's just about a millimetre over the full line, so I'm happy with that. Now we turn our attention to probably the most challenging bit, the air filter, well the carburettor really, that's the most challenging bit. So air filter, that's easy enough, that just comes out like that. I've got a new one of these have a pre-filter behind them, which you see that one. You could clean it, but I'd kind of like to start with a fresh one. That air filter's not too bad, it's a bit clagged up in the corner there. These are all 8mm. Okay, that was easy enough. Although very mucky, just a little tube there. I've ordered a Briggs and Stratton carburettor refurb repair kit. So I'm hoping I've got that gasket and the one behind. I know I've got the bowl gasket. I'm going to take a picture of how all these linkages are set up, just in case the memory isn't quite there for putting them back together. Back to 10mm for the, you know, just going to throw a 9mm at me just for fun. No. So 3/8 for these. Makes a change from metric, I guess. That doesn't really fit very well, but it's the best I've got. Okay, so here we are with the carburettor. I've got this Briggs and Stratton kit carb overhaul 498260. It's got a whole load of parts including Welch plugs and stuff like that. I'm not sure if I'm going to be using all of those, but I probably will use the that fuel control, what am I going to call this? Let's call it what the instructions call it, shall we? Idle mixture valve. Float bowl gaskets, that's the gasket between the carb and the mower, goes in there. That's a gasket between the air filter and the carb on the other side, and that is going to need renewing because that one is not looking in the best of shape. So my carburetor cleaning process is get rid of a lot of the muck on the outside with a toothbrush, get rid of old gasket material, then put it in an ultrasonic bath, which you'll see in a bit, and then blow through with compressed air. So toothbrush and some WD-40, just trying to get rid of as much of this stuff on the outside as I can without directing any of it onto the inside. Because when we put this in the ultrasonic bath, most of it will fall downwards, but you just don't want a whole soup of grass bits, because they could actually cause more problems than you're solving by putting it in the ultrasonic bath in the first place. I'm not aiming for sort of concourse level spotless. Is there a concourse for lawnmowers? I don't know, but anyway, if there was, I'm not aiming for that. Just aiming to get as much of the muck off as possible. It's a 1/2 inch. Blimey, so that float bowl is a lot cleaner than I was expecting. So maybe we're barking up the wrong tree here. That gasket feels tired. By that I mean brittle. So now we're going to take the float out. So we've got a new, there's a down there, I don't know if you can see down there where the float valve was, there's a tiny little red washer seal which we'll replace. And we've also got a new float as well. So a full set of brushes and carburetor cleaning needles. These are for welder tips as well, but they do a similar job. So what I'm trying to do here is just get that seal out. Okay, that's extracted that. Just kind of testing out which ones of these fit in. There's this small plug on the inside here. I'm just debating whether to take it out or not. I think probably not, you know. So an initial go with paper towel and then clean with some compressed air. Clean and dry, I should say. Gasket residue should be a lot more soggy now. They're easier to remove. Being as careful as I can not to gouge the aluminium. Doesn't look particularly clean, but it feels smooth. So now it's a case of going around with my brushes. Now that the ultrasonic bath has hopefully loosened any debris in the jets. So we've been through all of the orifices that we can get to with the brush. Now it's a case of blowing out. So I'm happy that that's all dry. The gasket mating surfaces are clean. First thing I'm going to do is put this washer back in for the float needle. I'm using a small brass drift. It's nice and soft on the end, and I'm checking that has actually fallen in the right way, which it has. There was a wrong and a right way round for that, so make sure you get it the right way round. So the float slots in there like that. Then you get a new pin in the kit. Which goes through like that. Now a new gasket. And the drain bolt with a new washer on it. So new idle mixture screw and old. Tiny bit of debris on the old one actually, so maybe that will make a difference. We will see.
The instructions say for the initial adjustment, turn it clockwise until it seats lightly and then turn counterclockwise one turn. So that's about there. And that'll enable you to start the engine, it says, and then you can go from there with a more precise adjustment. So let's put it back on and see if we've made any difference. Alright, let's connect it up again. That was easier with the throttle set to low. The rest of this is covered in grass, as you can see, but this channel, and there's a port in there, so I've kept that really nice. Well, I've given it a clean actually. And there's these 3 little pins to help locate the gasket in the right place. Checking everything all fits okay, and it does. So that enables you to both guide the hose into the right position and also stop spilling fuel everywhere. So what I did before, I had my 10mm socket on the sort of the wobble setting. So I usually just go through a few checks at this point to make sure I haven't missed anything. So I have put oil in it. I have torqued up the blade. I've not left any tools underneath it. We've got fuel. We've got the air filter set up. The carburettor's set up with an initial setting of 1 turn out from all the way in on the idle screw. So last thing to do, just to lubricate the cables if yours are a little bit dry, and also measure the clutch travel, or measure the clutch bite point I should say. So the clutch is supposed to start biting when the lever, the arm, is between 32 and 38 millimeters from the handle. How you measure that is not a particularly exact science. Let's see where we are. So that's biting a bit soon. You'll see that there's a spring actually that just here that takes up. You know, if you're pulling beyond where the cable is at its maximum travel, then the spring just does it. So I'll slacken it off a bit. It's not too bad, but I'll just let it off a little bit. About right. Well, it was all going so well, but as you can probably tell by the fact that the carburettor is in pieces on the bench again, it didn't quite last. So it did about 10 bags worth of grass probably, so quite a lot. And then I stopped the lawnmower as usual to empty the grass, and it wouldn't start again. I think what's happened, and I felt that it was a fuel starvation problem, because sometimes you could leave it for long enough and it would start, and then other times it wouldn't at all. I think what's happened is that when I tipped the fuel tank up to hold the fuel in place while I took it off to save draining the tank, I think what's happened is some more debris has got into the carburettor. I also probably hadn't paid close enough attention to this part before. I don't think I'd quite twigged that this goes in here, and so is basically the main way of metering fuel into the main jet and the idle jet. So taking it apart again, giving that a good clean with my well, they're actually welder tip cleaners, but they're really good for cleaning carburettors. Clean both of those out, sprayed carb cleaner. You notice I've got a little short straw on the end, and that means that you can press it with quite firm pressure onto the jets and so make a good seal. So sprayed carb cleaner in there, there, that one down there, and what I've been looking for very carefully is, well, firstly, when you take the idle jet out or idle needle out, that you get carb cleaner coming out of there, and then secondly, you probably won't be able to see it too well, but I've put a picture, or I've taken a picture which I'll probably replace. There's 3 holes in there down the side, and you need to see carb cleaner coming out of all of those when you're spraying. For the front 2 anyway, I think it was, out of that idle jet there, and then for the rear one, and you're spraying down that inner passageway down there, not the one on the surface, the one further in. I've done that, cleaned the float bowl again, because there was some debris in there, even just from that little amount of mowing I've done. And I've also fitted a fuel filter. It's not ideal, it's probably a bit big, but it will do the job, and it will hopefully get us up and running again, because it was all I had available at the time. So I'm going to put the carb back together, we'll put it on the mower again, and then set it up again and see how we get on.
Okay, so that's it, we're done. It's sounding great. I'm just going to explain what I was doing there. So with the red plain slotted screwdriver, I was adjusting the idle mixture. What the manual or carb setup guidelines say to do is to start with that one full turn out from in as far as it will go, start the engine and then go from there. And what that actually showed was that the engine was running quite lean at that. You see that as I unscrewed it, the revs started rising, indicating that the fuel mixture is getting into a more optimum zone, and then I unscrewed it more and then the revs started falling again, indicating that the engine's running too rich. So as I wound it out and the revs started rising, what I was then doing with the Phillips screwdriver was adjusting the idle stop for the throttle. I was moving it back so that the engine idles at a reasonable RPM. When I say reasonable, you should measure it with a tachometer. I don't have one, unfortunately, so I've done it by ear. What I think sounds about right. The book value, if you want to go by that, is 1,750 RPM. What I was also looking for then is whether the engine's still revved up and whether the throttle response was good, both revving up and coming back down to idle. Sometimes if you've got the mixture wrong, you can have it hanging up at a higher RPM and struggling to return to idle, but this was going just fine, as you can hopefully tell. So, second time lucky, hopefully, with this. Learned from my mistakes on this one, which were that if you're going to turn the fuel tank on its side, expect to dislodge some debris and have it go back into the carburettor. I've got a filter in place now. It's not particularly pretty, but the engine's running really well. I could probably get away with a much smaller filter, so I'll swap that over next time when it next needs servicing. I'm expecting that to happen quite quickly because I suspect a whole load of debris that's been dislodged will now be making its way into that filter. And the other learning point was that, unlike on a Honda, the bolt that holds the float bowl on is actually integral to the metering of fuel, and so don't skimp on cleaning that either. So that's it. We're done. Hopefully this was helpful and you now know how to service your Hayter Harrier with the Briggs and Stratton Quantum engine. Thanks for watching, happy lawn mowing, and see you next time. Bye.